I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am, trying to make sense of what's left of my life after everything fell apart. It's raw, it's real, and honestly, I still feel like I'm standing in a fog where everything I believed in is crumbling. My wife, Sarah, and I have been together for almost 8 years. We met during college, and it was one of those stories everyone calls meant to be, or at least that's what I thought. She was smart, funny, beautiful in a way that made my stomach tighten whenever I looked at her. We moved in together after 2 years, got married 3 years after that. I thought I knew her inside out. We weren't perfect, no relationship is, but we had a good rhythm, a spark that felt real. Until the day I found out I was wrong. That night, I'd come home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. It was a rare occasion. Sarah usually had her evenings packed with yoga or drinks with friends. But I was tired, so I decided to surprise her with a dinner. I cooked her favorite pasta, lit some candles, and set the table in the living room. The apartment smelled like garlic and basil, and I could feel my nerves settling as I waited for her to come home. She texted earlier she'd be late, which was normal, but I was eager to see her, to tell her how much I missed her voice during the day. When she finally arrived, I could see the flicker of her heels on the entryway mat as she stepped inside. She looked exhausted but happy until she saw me. "Hey," I said, smiling, trying to keep my voice light. "Tried to surprise you." She looked surprised, but then her face softened. "Aw, babe, this is sweet." She hugged me, but I noticed her hands were a little too cold, her smile a shade too thin. We sat down to eat, and somewhere between the first bites of pasta and her glass of wine, I started noticing her phone blinking on the table. I'd seen that kind of notification many times before, nothing suspicious, just social media alerts or a message from a friend. But that night, something felt different. My eyes drifted to the screen without thinking. I saw a message pop up. From James, and I froze. It was just a quick snippet. "Can't wait to see you tonight, miss you already." My stomach clenched like a fist tightening inside me. I stared at it, stunned. My mind raced to process what I was reading, but it was right there on the screen, evidence of something I'd never even suspected. I felt my chest tighten, palms going slick. My mind was screaming, but all I could do was stare at that message and wonder if I'd been living a lie. Were the years I thought we shared just a carefully curated act? Was everything I believed about her a damn illusion? I looked up at her. "Who's James?" I asked, voice trembling. She froze, her eyes darting to the phone. For a second she looked guilty, then flustered, and finally she just shrugged. "That's a friend," she said casually, as if I was supposed to accept that, but I knew better. I saw the panic in her eyes, the way her fingers trembled. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. That's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time slip-up. This was a betrayal that had probably been happening for a while. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the sense of betrayal, the feeling of being played for a fool. I sat there, stunned, trying to process the mess in my head. The smell of her perfume mixed with the aroma of the pasta, but all I could focus on was the sudden, hollow ache spreading through my chest. My head was pounding. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something, anything except sit there. And that's when I made a decision. I didn't want to be a fool anymore. I didn't want to be the guy who got played. I had to do something, not just confront her. No, I needed to make her regret it. I needed a plan, a way to hit her where it hurt and to reclaim whatever was left of my dignity. I looked at her, still clutching her phone, and said, "We're talking tomorrow, but tonight, I need some space." Her eyes widened just a little too much, and I knew I'd crossed a line. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. Now I'm sitting on my bed, staring at nothing, thinking about what comes next. I never imagined I'd feel this way, so betrayed, so angry. But I also know this is just the beginning, because I won't let her get away with it, and I sure as hell won't be the fool anymore. Next part. The next morning I woke up with that gnawing feeling in my gut, like I'd swallowed a stone. I kept replaying everything from last night. The way her face looked when I asked about James, the tremor in her fingers as she held her phone, the way her eyes darted away, trying to hide something. I knew deep down that I'd seen enough. I stayed in bed longer than usual, pretending to be more tired than I really was. My mind spun with possibilities. I had to decide what I'd do next. I couldn't just confront her blindly, not without a plan. No, I needed to be methodical. I needed proof, something airtight. I got up slowly, the apartment feeling eerily quiet. I didn't want to seem suspicious, so I moved around cautiously, trying to keep my emotions in check. I remembered her phone sitting on the coffee table, buzzing every now and then. I waited until she left for her morning yoga class, then I quietly tiptoed over, grabbed her device, and sat down with the intent to dig through her messages. Her phone was locked, of course. I tried the usual passcodes, her birthday, our anniversary, random combinations I'd never remember, but nothing worked. So I went for the next best thing. I used her email to reset the password. It was a gamble, but I was desperate. When I finally got into her account, I started scrolling through her emails and texts, looking for signs of anything that might confirm what I already suspected. It wasn't long before I found a string of messages between her and James. They weren't just casual, "Hey, how are you?" stuff. No, they were charged, intimate, full of promises and flirtation. I saw photos, nothing explicit but enough to make my stomach turn. A picture of her in bed, her legs crossed, smirking at her phone. A message from James, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." My fingers clenched the keyboard. My chest felt like it had been punched. The proof was there, plain as day. I took screenshots, copied everything, and then I closed her email. I needed to process this first before making a move. I went to the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, feeling like I was underwater. The room was cold, but I could feel the heat of betrayal burning through me. How long had this been going on? Was she ever honest with me? I kept asking myself all these questions, but the answers felt like shards of glass, cutting me from the inside out. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew better. I'd seen enough to know that rushing in would only make things messier. I had to keep my nerve, plan my next move carefully. That's when I decided I'd gather more evidence, maybe lure her into a trap, and then I'd get my revenge. Not in some petty, destructive way. No, I wanted her to feel what I felt, betrayed, humiliated, like the fool she'd made me into. As I sat there, I realized I'd been such a fool for so long. I thought I knew her, but I was blind. The woman I loved had been slipping away, hiding a secret that now seemed to define her. I'd never felt this sick before, this cold. I knew I had to act, but I didn't want to do it impulsively. I needed to be smart, strategic. Later that day, I started drafting my plan. It was simple but ruthless. Make her believe I knew everything, let her sweat it out a little, watching her carefully, then strike. I'd find ways to expose her in front of James, maybe even make her confess. I wanted her to believe she still had control, but I'd take it from her little by little. I'd turn the tables, and she'd realize she'd lost more than just my trust. That night, I arranged to meet James. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about ending this lie once and for all. I needed him to see what he'd done, to understand that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I had my evidence, my plan, and the resolve to follow through. The whole thing felt like walking a tightrope. My palms were sweaty just thinking about it, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. If she thought she could cheat on me and get away with it, she was dead wrong. I was done being the victim. It was time she saw what real consequences looked like. As I waited for James to arrive, I took a deep breath, trying to steel myself for whatever was coming. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating, ruthless. I was going to show her that her betrayal would cost her more than she ever imagined. And when the moment came, I was ready to make her regret every second she ever crossed me. Next part. That evening, I kept my nerves in check as I sat in a quiet coffee shop downtown. James was running late, which gave me time to stew over the situation. My stomach was tight, and my palms felt sticky against the cold ceramic of my coffee cup. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting him to walk in with that cocky grin of his. I knew I had to be calm, but every ounce of me wanted to tear into him right then and there. When he finally arrived, he looked comfortable, almost smug. I could see the arrogance in his eyes, like he thought he was untouchable. I wanted to shake him, but I kept my voice steady. "James," I said, extending my hand. "Thanks for meeting me." He smirked, taking a seat across from me. "No problem. Heard you wanted to talk about Sarah." I nodded, trying to act casual. "Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand what's been going on. I've seen the messages." I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. "Here's everything. I've got proof of everything, photos, chats, everything." He looked at the screen, then back at me, his smile faltering just a little. Look, man, I didn't mean for it to get this messy. It just happened. I didn't think she was happy anymore. That's funny, I said, feeling my jaw tight. Because from what I saw, she was happier than I've ever seen her, smiling in your messages, talking about spending the night with you. Did she tell you she was married? James shifted in his seat, trying to regain composure. She never said she was married. I thought she was single. I leaned forward, feeling the fire rising in my chest. You think I don't know what's going on, that you didn't know she was married, but you did. She told you, and you still went ahead knowing full well that's not just betrayal, that's malicious. He looked uncomfortable now, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I didn't want to cause drama, but she's the one who kept sneaking around. It's not all my fault. I scoffed. You're a piece of shit, James. You're not some innocent victim. You're just a guy who saw an opportunity and took it. And Sarah, she's just as bad. She's been lying to me for months. He hesitated, then said softly, "What are you gonna do now?" That's when I decided I played my hand enough. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and pressed play on a recorded voice memo I'd secretly made earlier that day. It was a live recording of her confessing to James, admitting she was tired of hiding her feelings, that she was planning to leave me. The words rang out loud and clear. I can't do this anymore. I want to be with James. James's face turned pale. You recorded that? I nodded, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. Yeah. I want you to know I'm not some fool who's going to get played anymore. I've got all your messages. All her confessions. I'm done pretending I didn't know what was happening. You both need to face the truth. He looked at me with a mixture of anger and guilt. What do you want from me? I leaned back, feeling my fists clenched on my lap. I want you to stay the hell away from her. Keep your distance, or I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are, an opportunist and a liar. And Sarah, she's not getting away with this either. I've got plans for her, big ones. That night I left the coffee shop knowing that I had everything I needed. The evidence was airtight, and my mind was racing with how to execute my revenge. I wasn't planning to destroy her or James, not physically. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies, to see her realize she'd lost everything that mattered. I spent the next few days meticulously setting my plan into motion. I contacted a private investigator, had him discreetly follow her. I wanted to know exactly where she was going, who she was with. I set up a few accidental meetings, arrangements, so I could be there when she least expected. In the meantime, I kept my composure, acting like everything was normal, at least outwardly. Inside, I was boiling. The worst part, I watched her from a distance, saw her flirt, saw her smile with James, and felt my stomach turn. But I kept calm. I knew that the real game had just begun. She thought she was clever, that she could get away with her lies, but I had her number now. I was going to make her pay, not with shouting or violence, but with the kind of final, icy retribution that would leave her reeling. And as I watched her leave that night, with her face glowing in the street lamp, I realized I was done being the guy who got duped. I was about to turn the tables, and she'd regret every second she ever crossed me. Next part. Over the next week, I stayed locked into my plan. Every little detail mattered, every move, every word, every look. I was meticulous, cold even. I had to be. I couldn't afford to slip up now. I continued following her, making sure I knew her routines. I didn't want to be caught off guard. I set up a few chance encounters with her, coincidences that weren't really coincidences. I'd appear just when she was least expecting, and I kept the whole thing calm, almost detached. If she thought I was obsessed or desperate, it would give her an edge. But I was calculating. Cold. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just a guy she could toy with. At her workplace, I started dropping subtle hints, casually asking questions about her schedule, her friends, her plans. I even planted a little device in her car. Nothing invasive, just enough to record her conversations when she thought no one was listening. I was careful not to tip her off, but I got enough to reinforce what I already knew. She was planning to leave me, and she was deep in her affair with James. Meanwhile, I kept the evidence collection going. I'd gathered enough messages, enough recordings. I sat on a treasure trove of proof that would make her regret every lie. Every time I thought about it, my stomach twisted. I'd never felt this kind of cold fury before. I'd loved her once, but now I wanted her to suffer just a little, more than she'd ever made me suffer. One night I decided to escalate. I made a fake social media account and started sending subtle hints, just enough to make her nervous. I posted a few pictures of her favorite spots in the city, tagged her in a few innocuous posts, and made sure she saw them. I wanted her to think I was onto her, that I was aware of her every move. It was cruel, maybe, but she had played a cruel game. She deserved to feel cornered, to realize that I was no longer the naive husband she'd once manipulated. That same night she called me. Her voice trembled the way it always did when she was trying to hide something. "Hey," she said softly, "we need to talk." I kept my tone even. "Yeah, we do. I've got some things I want to say too." I paused, then added, "Meet me at the park tomorrow evening, alone." She hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want this to turn into a fight." "Just come," I said, "and be prepared to tell me the truth." As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. I knew she was scared, and she should be. She played with fire, and now she was about to get burned. The next evening she arrived at the park just as I expected. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that sticks to your skin and makes every breath feel sharp. She looked nervous, her face pale, eyes darting around like she was expecting a trap. "Thanks for coming," I said calmly, leaning against the park bench. "I think we should have this out in the open." She nodded, hesitating before speaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was stupid and I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you, but it's not what you think." I looked straight at her. "It's exactly what I think. You cheated on me, Sarah, with James, during our anniversary dinner, no less." Her eyes widened. "How did you find out?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots, the messages, the pictures, everything. Her face drained of color. "I don't want to hear excuses. It's over. You lied for so long, played me like I was stupid, but I'm tired of being the fool." She looked like she wanted to say something, but I raised a hand. "No words, just listen. I've been planning this for a while. I want you to understand what you've done to me, what you've lost." I revealed my secret plan, how I'd set her up, collected all the evidence, and prepared to expose her. I told her I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake, but I wanted her to know what it feels like to be betrayed that deeply. Her tears started to fall. "Please. I never meant to hurt you. I was stupid. I thought I was unhappy, but I was just scared. I didn't want to lose everything." I shook my head. "That's the thing, Sarah. You weren't just scared. You were selfish. You threw away what we had, and now I'm done. I'm done pretending everything's okay. You're leaving, and I'm not going to stop you, but I want you to remember this moment, because this is what betrayal looks like. And I'm not going to be the one on his knees anymore." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the keys to our apartment, and handed them over. "Take your stuff, leave tonight." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, voice trembling. "Are you really letting me go?" "Yeah," I said quietly, "because I'm finally free of this lie." As she turned to walk away, I watched her disappear into the night, feeling something like relief mixed with bitterness. I knew this was the end of us. No more lies, no more hiding, just the cold truth. The final step was simple. I filed the divorce papers the following day, handed over her keys, and closed that chapter of my life. I learned a lot during this, mostly that the truth, no matter how hard, is always better than a lie. And sometimes the best revenge is just walking away, knowing you're the only one left holding the truth. Next part. After I handed over her keys and watched her walk out that night, I felt an odd sense of calm. Like the storm had finally passed and I could breathe again. But beneath that calm, I knew the real work was just beginning. I'd been betrayed in a way I never expected, and now I had to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. The first thing I did was to delete every trace of her from my phone and social media. I didn't want her to have any power over me anymore, no connection left. It was like cutting ties with a ghost. I knew some part of me would always feel the sting of her betrayal, but I refused to let her control my peace of mind. I had to reclaim my space, my dignity. In the days that followed, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd been so consumed by anger and revenge that I didn't realize how much I'd been holding inside. Now, without her, I could finally breathe freely, though every corner of my mind kept replaying the betrayals, the lies, her face when she was caught. I knew I'd need time to heal, but I also knew I'd never forget what she did. I also started to reconnect with friends, those who had watched the whole thing unfold, those who reached out with words of support. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, even in the worst of times. I realized the importance of having people who could remind me of who I was outside of that toxic relationship. Without her, I felt like I was rediscovering myself piece by piece. But I also knew I couldn't just disappear into a new routine and pretend none of it had happened. No, I had to be honest with myself about what I'd gone through. I wrote in a journal, something I'd never really done before, trying to process everything. I documented each step, each feeling, each lesson. That's when I finally admitted that I'd been a fool for staying so long, for not seeing the signs. I had ignored the little red flags, her distracted eyes, the late-night phones, her sudden mood swings. I'd wanted so badly to believe in us that I overlooked the cracks in the foundation. One thing was clear. I had to move forward, but I also had to forgive myself for the times I turned a blind eye. Forgiving her was another story. That was going to take much longer. But I understood now that holding onto anger wouldn't do me any good. It was time to let go, to truly release that pain and start rebuilding. I started planning my next steps. I looked into new hobbies, took up running, and even signed up for a few classes. I didn't want to be defined by her betrayal. Instead, I wanted to find joy in small things, fresh air, good music, the feeling of progress. I knew I'd come out of this a different person, stronger in ways I never expected. And here's what I've learned. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But it's also a chance to reevaluate what really matters. I refuse to let her betrayal define me, but I also refuse to forget it. Instead, I carry it as a lesson, one that reminds me to be more cautious, more honest with myself, and to never ignore the signs when something feels wrong. Now I focus on rebuilding what I lost, my confidence, my sense of security, my peace of mind. I started seeing a therapist not because I still blame myself, but because I want to understand why I stayed so long and how to trust again. Slowly, I'm piecing my life back together. It's not easy, it's not quick, but I know I'll get there. In the end, I'm grateful for one thing, the truth. It hurt like hell, but it set me free. Sometimes the only way to truly move on is to face the raw, ugly truth head on, no matter how much it stings. And now I know that I'm finally free to decide my own story. Next part. It's been a few weeks since I handed over the keys, signed the divorce papers, and finally walked away from what felt like a prison of lies. Honestly, it's been a roller coaster, an emotional mess I'm still trying to sort out. But I can tell you this, I've never felt more alive, more in control of my own life. The betrayal cut deep, but it also pushed me to finally face myself honestly. I still think about her sometimes, her face, the way she looked when she realized I knew everything. The moment I confronted her in the park, the cold night I handed her her keys. It's all burned into my memory like a scar that never quite fades. But every day I remind myself that I did what I had to do. I refuse to be a fool, and I refuse to let her define my worth. That's the real victory. I've moved on, not just physically but mentally. I'm rebuilding my life from scratch, no longer tethered to her lies or James's betrayal. I see now that the pain was necessary, pain that forced me to wake up and realize my worth. I don't regret the revenge either. It wasn't about destruction for its own sake. It was about reclaiming what was stolen from me, about standing tall in the face of deception. Looking back, I see the red flags I ignored, her distracted eyes, the late-night texts, the small lies that felt harmless at the time. I wish I'd seen them sooner, but I also accept that I was blinded by love. Now I know better. I know that trust is something you earn every day, and betrayal isn't just about infidelity. It's about respect, honesty, and integrity. To anyone going through something similar, here's my advice. Don't wait for the signs to become bigger. Pay attention to the little things, those subtle shifts in behavior, the unexplained phone secrecy, the emotional distance. Because once the trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. But more than that, don't be afraid to face the truth. No matter how ugly it gets, honesty is the only way to truly heal. And finally, don't be afraid to take control, even if it feels like your world's crashing down. Remember, you have the power to rebuild it. The pain might never completely go away, but it will fade. The scars will remain, yes, but they'll serve as a reminder that you survived, that you're stronger than any betrayal. Today, I feel lighter, free. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her. It's about setting myself free from the lie I was living. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away, unapologetically. I handed her the keys and I closed that chapter for good. I'm ready now to start over, to find happiness again, this time on my own terms. So I'll leave you with this. Trust your gut, face the truth head on, and never settle for less than honesty. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. And no betrayal can take that away if you refuse to let it.